Hey everyone, Brayden here coming to you with a breaking Disney news update on a topic I haven't covered a whole lot thus far because firstly, it's a hot button political type of topic. In this channel, insofar as Disney is concerned, we're more talking about infrastructure projects, finance, things of that nature, but we know that those things end up getting tied up in politics, so it really wasn't that. The thing is, you have this Reedy Creek situation where it seems that very few people actually know what they're talking about. I don't, I'm not a lawyer, and this is quite complicated stuff. And I live in Central Florida and I have neighbors who have actually worked for Reedy Creek or currently work for Reedy Creek. And when I was asking them, they should be experts, right? They work for Reedy Creek. They didn't seem very concerned about any of this throughout the whole, media storm and everything we've been hearing throughout the past year. So I was like, let's just wait and see how this turns out. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the Reedy Creek Improvement District, it is a special district that was created back in 1967 to be the local governing body for Walt Disney World. They are responsible for the roads, construction permits, fire services, building code, all sorts of things like that. And a lot of folks think that Disney had this district created so that they could have the ultimate control over Walt Disney World. They basically set this all up when they were acquiring the property for Walt Disney World, and along with it, they'd have this special district where they could do anything that they wanted. And it is true that Disney got all sorts of special powers through this district, such as the ability to build a nuclear power plant. That's one that people often mention, but there was a lot of other stuff in there too with the experimental prototype community of tomorrow in mind. Remember that inside of the Reedy Creek Improvement District, there was supposed to be an actual city, a prototype city. So they had the power to make an airport, build stadiums, things of that nature. There were other reasons to make Reedy Creek though, that weren't just about Disney controlling everything. Think about Disney buying up all that land and wanting to develop so much of it in a very short period. It was undeveloped swamp. So who is supposed to pay for all of the roads and the infrastructure out there in the swamp? Those are public works projects. So who should be responsible for that? The existing local governments and their small tax bases. Orlando wasn't that big. Was the state supposed to pay for all of that? Good luck, right? So setting up this district was not just something that was good for Disney, it was also good for Florida, eliminating any sort of public works or administrative burden that Disney would have imposed on a local or on a state level, and getting this giant tax revenue machine up and running as quickly as possible. So needless to say, Reedy Creek is quite cool. It's why we have Walt Disney World. It's how it all works and how it all sort of like the connective glue. How do you get from park to park? You take the roads, right? So there really is something cool about that and how Disney went about doing it. But fast forward many years later here, and here Disney is still with this district that was drafted back in 1967, which Disney has a decent amount of control over. The Reedy Creek Improvement District has long been due for an update. The law back in the 60s is not nearly like the law we have now in Florida. This was something that I have heard was on the state's to-do list for a long time, something that was floated around but they never ended up acting on. And as we know, what ended up happening is Governor Ron DeSantis, he hopped on it last year once there was a political impetus to finally get this done. So all the noise aside, Reedy Creek has now been reformed. It is now this new thing. Ultimately, what has changed? What did we get here? Has anything changed on the day-to-day? Not according to the Reedy Creek folks who watch our videos, what they've told me. By all accounts, this ended up being a pretty run-of-the-mill update to a special district in Florida that should have been updated to comply with current Florida law a long time ago, in my opinion. But there's one notable change which is not run-of-the-mill and not what we've seen with most other special district updates in the past, and that is the Florida governor removing the existing board, which was largely controlled by Disney, and handpicking new members to occupy the board of Disney's local governing body, which is now called the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. The idea with this adversarial board controlling Disney's infrastructure is to keep Disney in check. That's the idea. That's sort of the sales pitch that we got with the governor doing this. Last month, when all this went into effect, there were some questions of, is it constitutional for the state to target a specific company and get in its way like this and give it a hard time? Could Disney sue the governor or this reformed Reedy Creek, bring this to the Supreme Court, something like that? Well, many sources said no. Disney is not going to sue. They don't see it as being worth the money, worth the hassle. Parks Chairman Josh D'Amaro, he seemed ready to try to work with the new board, saying last month, quote, "If that new board understands the value that gets created here and how it positively impacts the Central Florida community, I think they will be aligned with our vision and will will carry on the Reedy Creek soul that's been in place. End quote. So while the question of Disney suing Reedy Creek, it really seemed unlikely, it really seemed like something that we didn't have to talk about or worry about, everything changed today when a meeting of the new Board of Supervisors was held. And it may very well end up being that the new Reedy Creek, this Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, they may be the one suing Disney, not the other way around. In fact, they may have to do this because in the months leading up to the reforming of the district, the new board alleges that Disney took out an insurance policy of sorts while Disney's board was still in place. What do they mean by insurance policy? Well, in previous meetings, when it was still Disney's board, it is alleged by the new board that Disney was given wide rein for the next 30 years by their board. This was reported by WESH's Bob Hazen, who was present at the meeting. I'm no lawyer and this is a developing situation, but what seems to have happened here is the old board locked in legal documents such as this developer's agreement and many others, which explicitly bar the governing body's future board from being able to change these past agreements. So they made these new agreements, which were, something effective out to wazoo 30 years into the future. And then it was said, the board cannot change this in the future. Anything that happens to the board, they cannot affect any of this. Meaning that as the old board was on its way out, agreements favorable to Disney were locked in, where it specifically stipulates that these agreements stay into effect no matter what any future board says. This may mean that this new oversight district board appointed by the governor has found themselves in a potentially powerless position, where the only way to regain control and have say over Disney's affairs as was originally envisioned would be to have these existing agreements that were drafted in the lead up to the reforming of Reedy Creek, have those eliminated, have those broken, have them made null and void, which unless Disney and the new board can work something out, will mean legal battles, will mean a war, will mean lawsuits, perhaps even going to the Supreme Court, which is not me just hyping this up here. That was actually thrown out by the board chair, Garcia, at this meeting. And right now they are looking into hiring multiple law firms, big law firms, to aid the new Reedy Creek in potentially protracted litigation that may directly involve the Walt Disney Parks and resorts and their affiliates. That is straight from the Reedy Creek meeting here. All this means that Disney's own Reedy Creek now may be going to war against them. And the reason I say maybe is because this is all very tentative, very early on. It seems like they're considering doing lawsuits or things of this nature, but you really have to wonder, what choice does this new board have? If it's true that Disney locked in their authority and their powers and what they can do in a way that can't be upended by any future board for the next 30 years, that means that this new board is a lame duck and they have to go to court and try to poke holes in these agreements. We're calling Disney's insurance policy here if they want to have any say over Disney and actually do their jobs that they are there to do. Disney has just issued a statement now that this news is hitting the wires and everyone's starting to talk about it. Going on the defensive, they say, quote, "All agreements signed between Disney and the district were appropriate and were discussed and approved in open, noticed public forums in compliance with Florida's government in the Sunshine Law." End quote. So Disney saying, hey guys, maybe we did all this, but we did it, on the up and up. We did it in public. We did it the way that we were supposed to. So you guys are just gonna have to deal with it. Sorry, which is pretty crazy stuff there. This is an absolutely crazy situation, you guys. For a year now, we've heard all these crazy theories about what might happen to Reedy Creek. Would Orange County residents be responsible for the district's debt? No, none of that ended up being the case. There are a lot of things that people are saying and none of it ended up being true. But that's what's so funny about all this, because reality often ends up being much weirder than anything that we could imagine in terms of what was going to happen with something like this. Who would have known that this Reedy Creek reformation, it wouldn't result in Disney suing Reedy Creek over, free speech or something like that, but instead it may be Reedy Creek suing Disney, as the new board may be potentially powerless here, something that may have been done on purpose on Disney's end in the months leading up to the reforming of Reedy Creek. And now it all may be heading to the Supreme Court as Disney's own own governing district goes to war against them. Wild stuff. As I said at the start, I do know some folks at Reedy Creek, and they say on a day-to-day level there's been basically no change, and that might have something to do with these inalterable agreements that Disney locked in before the new board showed up. Can the new board even change the day-to-day at Reedy Creek? What powers do they currently have if all this stuff, all these agreements are locked in and cannot be changed by the board? That's pretty crazy to think about. An absolutely insane situation. Let me know what you guys think of all of this. If you want to keep track of this and all the latest Disney news, be sure to subscribe with those notifications on. Thank you so much for watching. From the Mickey Views Magic Studio, this is Brayden. Have a magical day.